My name's Darren Main. I've been practicing yoga for 25 years and teaching yoga for about 20 years. Yoga, what is yoga? That's a really good question, and it's actually surprisingly difficult to answer. And if you ask 100 yoga teachers, you're going to get 100 different answers. But I define yoga as the joining together of that which is perceived to be separate, which is a big mouthful of words, but we perceive the body as a bunch of separate parts, the body and the mind from being separate. We perceive these things, but they're not really separate. So it's a series of practices that are designed to join together all of the things that we perceive as separate in this world, whether it's a separation between me and you, or between various races, different religions, more personally in our bodies, our body and mind, the different systems of our body, spiritually speaking, the soul and the creator, whatever that means to you and whatever faith you're a part of or not. It's just recognizing unity where we're sort of, the ego pulls us to see separation. Yoga is a very ancient practice that developed in India over about 6,000 years. It's still evolving now. And it shares some of the same roots as Buddhism and Hinduism, rooted in the ancient Vedic culture. And it's evolved, and as it did evolve, it branched off and separated from those other traditions to become sort of its own practice, its own discipline, with a number of philosophies contributing to it. But here in the West, it came over about 50 years ago, and it was brought over by a handful of gurus who introduced yoga to the West, and focusing primarily on the physical discipline of yoga. So we have some people who do it more for exercise, other people for meditation, other people for stress management. Some people come for one reason and stay for another. So it's whatever you need it to be, really. But it has evolved to be a very complex system over a very, very long period of time. I think Western culture is really, we live by our to-do list. How many things can we check off? And that's how we sort of get our merit badge for the day, by doing more. And I think yoga asks us to do less, to be present to whatever is in front of us. And it's sort of a paradox, because when we quiet the mind and do less, we actually become more productive. And so I think for Americans and other Westerners, we find that we're resistant. We're trying to multitask everything because we believe it's going to achieve more, when really it's holding us back. And then we start doing yoga because we're so stressed out because of trying to multitask and do everything. And that helps us manage the stress, but it also helps us mentally to quiet the mind, focus the mind, so that we are doing one thing at a time. And that single-mindedness lets us check so much more off the to-do list. It's like a paradox that many people don't see coming. I started yoga when I was 17 or 18. I don't quite remember. I was newly clean and sober. I was in Narcotics Anonymous, and my sponsor told me that I needed to find a higher power. I didn't like that idea. I was raised in a very conservative Catholic house, and it left sort of a bad aftertaste in my mouth, and I resisted it. And so I went looking around for something that was not Christian, that was decidedly different from what I had been raised with. And there wasn't a lot back then. It wasn't like we had Buddhist temples anywhere. And so I went into a yoga class, and it freaked out my mom. And so I figured, wow, freaks out my mom, makes my sponsor happy, perfect. And what I found was that it wasn't just, I was doing it, I came in for the wrong reasons, sort of resisting what I thought, just sort of being the contrarian. But what I found was that it was the perfect place for me to land, because it celebrated the body instead of shaming it, which is a big part of my issue with my limited experience with Christianity. Today I think Christianity is wonderful and very body-centric, but at the time I had a very narrow view of that particular tradition. Yoga has changed me on every level. I call it alchemy. Alchemy is changing one metal into another. And I feel like everything about my life, my physical body, how I perceived it, how I moved in it, the way I talked about it when I looked in the mirror, my desire to treat my body with kindness and respect and reverence, my mind. I started to see my mind as the source of so much of my discomfort, that every bit of suffering that I experienced, even physical suffering, was tethered to my thinking around that experience. So as I learned to quiet my mind around discomfort, I realized that discomfort might still be there, but the suffering was not. And so it bled through into every aspect of my life. It taught me how to be in relationship with other people. By training my mind not to be so self-critical and so self-judgmental, that constant narrative, I found that I was less critical and judgmental of the other people in my life, which, not surprisingly, gave way to deeper, more meaningful relationships. It made me more effective politically speaking, not becoming more like this political person that yells and screams and burns politicians' images in effigy, but rather just being a force for change in the world. Where I saw injustice, I felt like I had the power to do something about it. So I can't think of an area of my life that was not changed by yoga, and I didn't see that coming. My biggest challenge as a yoga practitioner is, I think the same challenge every sort of spiritually minded seeker has, is that what yoga asks us to do goes against our nature, our ego nature, right? So to be generous, the ego wants to hoard and gather, and yoga asks us to be generous and giving and non-attached. Violence, I mean, we're all attracted to violence. Just look at the movies that sell, or the books we tend to read, or the TV shows we watch. So when yoga asks us to be non-violent, it goes against the grain. It goes against everything that comes so easily to us. When it asks me to clean up my diet, I want to go out for pizza. I like going out for pizza. But yoga asks me to just at least do it mindfully, to think about, how is this going to affect me? And so the discipline of applying yoga, not just to what I do on the yoga mat, but to every facet of life. The poses of life are there, and you're either holding them gracefully or you're not. Yoga asks us to sort of show up, be present, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable, when it's difficult. I mean, a discipline when it comes easy is not much of a discipline at all. I think my biggest challenge as a yoga teacher is the same challenge parents have, in that a parent can see their child struggling and suffering, and they can help sometimes, but every child has to grow at their own pace and figure things out for themselves. You can't teach a child to walk. They just have to do it on their own, and you can support them and encourage them, but they're doing it at their own pace. And the same is true for yoga. On the mat, people may never get into handstand or headstand, and it doesn't matter. But to remember that it's at their pace, not mine. Just to be patient. I will have to give the same instruction 500 times, and maybe on the 501st try, or instruction or reminder, they'll get it. Or maybe not, and that's okay. But it also extends to their life. When you hear stories from students, like somebody in a bad relationship or in a job they hate, and they feel incredibly trapped by that, what might be obvious to me and to many others, that you just need to quit your job or you need to leave this bad relationship, they need to figure that out on their own. Yoga gives people the tools, but giving somebody the toolbox isn't the same as building a house. You can give people the tools, but they have to learn how to swing the hammer. So it's hard to watch people suffer and to be patient while they figure out what they need to figure out for themselves.
So you practice in acceptance and patience for your students.
Compassion is, true compassion is not condition-based. It's not, I'll be compassionate if you get your drug addiction under control. It's, I'll be compassionate because you deserve compassion. And obviously, I would like for you to get your drug addiction under control, or whatever it is that you're struggling with, but that's not a condition for being a true yoga teacher. All you need to worry about as a yoga teacher is how can I be compassionate with this person? Support them as they explore change in their life, but never demand it, never expect or require anything. Just be there. When they're ready, make sure you're there to give them a high five. What is it like to be a yoga teacher? It's the best job in the world. I mean, I think even other healing professions like a dentist or a doctor, no one says, gee, I'm really looking forward to going and seeing my dentist today so I can get a root canal or a cavity filled or have somebody's hand shoved in my mouth. What dentists do is incredible and awesome. But almost without exception, people come to yoga in some degree of suffering, even if it's just mild stress from their busy day, or physical discomfort, or they're going through a hard time in their life. And they don't leave with all those problems solved most of the time, but they do leave better equipped to handle them. They feel better, they feel more at ease with whatever it is they're struggling with, whatever is inspiring that suffering. And so I think there's very few jobs that do that. I mean, a doctor will frequently make you better, but they may have to cut you open to do it, or slap on a latex glove, or stick a needle in your arm, or some other unpleasant thing that we're all grateful for. But there's that short-term ick factor of going to the doctor, going to the dentist. And that's not true of yoga. I think most people generally feel relieved to be here and better when they walk out the door. For someone who's never tried yoga, I would say a billion yogis can't be wrong. There's probably more of them. Over thousands of years, people have been doing yoga as a way of finding contentment and working through their struggles and finding refuge from their suffering. It may not be for you. You may find refuge from your suffering in a church, a synagogue, or a mosque. Or you may find it in going for a walk in nature. But clearly there's something to yoga, or people wouldn't keep coming back. So worst case scenario, you try it and you don't like it, right? It's not like, I wonder what will happen if I eat arsenic. You know, you might feel a lot better. You might enjoy it. It might be scary, and you might, you know, whenever we try something new, it might challenge you on that level. But, you know, a lot of people have found it to be a worthwhile pursuit, and I would listen to that. Oh, my favorite asana, it's probably Padmasana. Padmasana is, there's several names, but basically lotus pose. I like to meditate. Meditation is my favorite, and what I used to resist with so much, I now absolutely love. I just look forward to sitting and closing my eyes and finding that still space within. And sometimes it's still hard, but it's just gotten easier. And it's something I look forward to instead of resisting.
Okay, thank you, Darren. Thank you for your time
and
for sharing your opinions and wisdom.
Namaste.
Namaste.